You hear that? He was on earth while the sin of the golden calf took place. He was not blamed for it. So he's proving his point. It's one point in the Maimer so far. I mean, in this section of the Maimer, that the Godel Hadoyer is not nitvus ba'oven Hadoyer because of the anava, because of the humility. So who had it? Moshe had it, Aaron had it, and Yoshua has it.
What about all the other tzaddikim at the time? Caleb or anyone else that was there? I mean, they're just saying the three, but according to what the Maimer said in the beginning, if any of them would be Chayav Misa.
They weren't leaders. They weren't the leaders.
You sure he was not the leader at the time? He was a student.
But that's the point.
He was working with Moshe.
That's right.
He was a student. He was not considered a leader at all.
No, but it's called Kalev is not. Do you find in the Torah Kalev's called Masharas Moshe?
No.
Thank you.
No, but he was a tzaddik. We were saying earlier the tzaddikim were punished, so he was around at the time of, and he wasn't punished.
So obviously, it's a good question.
Okay.
Good question. Obviously, there's a difference in the level of commitment and bittul of a leader who is an Moshe, Aaron, and Yeshua compared to a Kalev and the rest. But Hasidus talks, I don't know if it talks directly about your question, but it does talk about this idea. But I hear your argument, and I want to think about it more. We'll stop here. I hope it wasn't too fast, but I want to cover some ground. L'chaim, it's Hey Tevis today, so we begin with the L'chaim. Today in Lubavitch, 1986, was it? Right? The Sfarim that belonged to the Frierdiker Rebbe's library were returned. And the Rebbe said, and it's printed, that it's a Chag HaSfarim, it's a festival for the Sfarim. Sfarim were released from captivity. And my feelings were second this morning when I heard a clip from Rabbi Groner in New York, who, after davening, they were saying L'chaim, and he repeated, and he said that the Rebbe heard after the Sfarim came back in the afternoon, and he was coming down to Mincha, so he heard that there was such exuberance and freilichkeit and liveliness. It was, you can't imagine, it was 7 days of Farbrengens. But this was the first, right? The first afternoon. And the Rebbe asked Rabbi Groner one question. Can they appeal the decision? And Rabbi Groner said, yes, they can. Right? That's American law. So the Rebbe turned to Rabbi Groner and said, so what's the simcha? What's the simcha? He didn't answer. He has no answer. And he said that then the Rebbe exited his room on his way down to 770 for Mincha, and he was following behind, which he always did, to assist the Rebbe when he needed assistance in any way. And he said the Rebbe did not make with his hand, this is what he says, I wasn't there. And when he went up to his bima for Mincha, he didn't clap or show any expression of exuberance. So Groner, this is his taich, his definition, not his definition, his interpretation, that because he asked him in the room, could it be appealed? And he said it could be appealed, so therefore what's the simcha? So he did, Rabbi Groner is intellectualizing why he wasn't besimcha more coming down, and everyone else around you is besimcha. And it's interesting, if you look into those sichas, and they're printed, and you can hear them actually online, the ones from during the week, they were. It wasn't about an opponent being defeated or the Rebbe as a Nasi being substantiated. The various feelings that Hasidim spoke about, and they're all true. But the Rebbe did not say those things in the Sichos. So I'm not saying that the feelings are not true feelings. But feelings, we have to remember, are feelings. And then there is the actual thing that the tzaddik, the nasi, the person who was most affected by this issue, vocalized and said, and it's printed, and you could listen to it. And what did he say? He said that it's a day to appreciate Sfarim, to buy Sfarim, to write Sfarim, to learn a Sfarim. So I think that we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that that is the message that the Rebbe told us to celebrate every year on Hey Teves. So learning from Sfarim, especially maybe Sfarim that you never took out in your bookshelf, it's a good idea on Hey Teves to take out a sefer that you haven't taken out in a long time, to look at it, to learn from it. The Rebbe encouraged the buying of Sfarim. I don't know how it's here in Florida, but in New York, in the schools they have fairs with sales on Sfarim. They try to implement the Chag HaSfarim on a hergish level, and this talks to this issue that came up here for Mincha and Shachris, and it comes up probably in most Chabad shuls. Without, it's a long conversation, and now is not the time for it, but just, there's a fundamental issue that's not, I feel that's not being addressed or understood. And the fundamental issue is that issues that surround and center around feelings and hergeshim, no one can legislate those to you. You either feel it or you don't feel it. And particularly in Chabad, in its philosophy, if you don't feel something and you pretend you do, it's a big no-no. In Chabad, like the worst thing is a faker, a pretender. So Rabbi Groner also said parenthetically, I heard him say this morning on the same clip, he said that when it came to Mincha, and when it came to Tachnun after Shmon Esrei, the